What's going on, it's the Polygon Don, and today I want to talk about 5 more underrated classics from my PS3 collection. We've got a couple heavy-hitting movie tie-ins, a muddy arcade racer, a clinically clean first-person platformer, and more. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Hey, du, kannst du lesen?
Und jetzt aufstehen. Ziehen Sie mal Ihre Papiere.
Papers. I lost mine. Ich habe sie meine Papier verloren.
Los, Hände hoch.
The Bourne Conspiracy is a third-person action game developed by High Moon Studios that released in 2008 during the height of the film franchise's popularity. Much like the movies, it centres on realistic and gritty action sequences with an espionage twist. You'd think that with the game being called Robert Ludlum's The Bourne Conspiracy, that it might be more closer aligned to the books than the plot of the movies, but it actually takes place prior to and during the events of the first film, The Bourne Identity. It tells its own story, but should still feel somewhat familiar if you've seen the movie. Playing as Jason Bourne, an amnesiac with a penchant for fisticuffs that seems to have every single Secret Service and spy agency across the world hunting him down, you will punch, kick and shoot your way through anything in your path as you try to unravel the past to discover who you are, inadvertently unearthing secrets of the shadowy organisation that created you. The game actually does a really decent job of communicating its tense and high-stakes story. The writing is decent, the action set pieces feel climactic and exciting, and even the cutscenes keep you on your toes by providing quick-time events to engage with. Great production value overall actually, it's a really solid looking game considering its age, and although I'm not personally the biggest fan of quick-time events, it still managed to provide some genuinely difficult moments, the most notable being the boss fights, which can be these really cinematic and lengthy slugfests. A $30 million investment by the American government to create an expert killing machine has resulted in Jason Bourne. Not only is he a pro at handling all types of firearms, but he's also a master at close quarter combat. There are plenty of hostile enemies in this game, and when they get too close, the camera angle switches into a more cinematic one that centers on you and your opponent. You have light and heavy attacks that you can chain together to make combos. There's a dodge and block button to avoid taking a hit yourself, and after you've pummeled your opponent for long enough, you'll be prompted with a takedown button that will usually end the fight there and then. Unless, of course, you're fighting a boss where you'll need to repeat this process multiple times. What's cool though is these takedowns have some great animations to them that in a lot of instances will use your surroundings to help finish them off. The shooting in this game isn't bad at all, but it's the brawling that really steals the show. It also doesn't hurt that Bourne has a sixth sense-like ability where he can highlight interactable objects and enemies in the environment, allowing him to hone in on them with speed and ease. But as mentioned, this isn't a walk in the park, and Bourne isn't impervious to bullets. You'll need to make full use of the cover mechanic as it's quite easy to get overwhelmed. Your enemies will be doing the same, so you'll have to get creative with the environment and utilise your sixth sense if you want to proceed. Oh, and if you're wondering why the pro tag on screen doesn't look anything like Matt Damon, it's because the A-lister and the developers parted ways during development due to creative differences. Apparently, Damon wanted the game to be more like Myst, of all things, and well, the devs disagreed. But with or without Damon's mo-capped face, this is a surprisingly solid game, especially as a movie tie-in. It also manages to encapsulate the energy and explosive nature of combat that made the trilogy of movies so popular at the time, and in fact builds upon it. So if like me you skipped this altogether back in the day, then grab a copy on either PS3 or Xbox 360 and enjoy it now. It holds up remarkably well, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Nailed is another arcade racer from a generation that already had plenty of quality arcade racers to choose from, and while it might not look as pretty as its fellow genre contemporaries, it does completely embody what it is about them that makes them so addictive and enjoyable to play. Realistic physics take a back seat in this off-road racer, while adrenaline-fueled rollercoaster-like tracks send you and usually 11 other contestants loop-de-looping and even flying through the game's lengthy tournament mode. It's all off-road, so you'll be driving motocross bikes and ATVs across some really rather long tracks that have multiple avenues and pathways to choose from. Most events are classed as simple races, which will require you to come first in order to win, but occasionally there are other requirements like accumulating the most boost points in a race, which as far as I could tell either means accumulating the most boost by driving well or spending the most time boosting either on the ground or in the air. There are rings of fire and fire gates that increased your boost meter when passing through them, but you can gain boost by driving well and successfully landing jumps or taking out other drivers as well. However, every now and again there will be a race with track modifiers or mutators such as unlimited boost. This applies to all within the race, however, and easily became the more chaotic events within the tournament. You gradually unlock parts for the vehicles that you can swap out to slowly upgrade them, with each upgraded part, whether it be handlebars, the engine or the exhaust for example, affecting the performance of 6 overall stats: steering on the ground, steering in the air, boost regeneration, boost capacity, acceleration and boost acceleration. Now, as mentioned, this game is not sim-like in its approach to driving in any way, shape or form. Realism is left behind, as is evident by the first jump you make in the game where you are instructed to steer in the air. And the tracks are all kind of designed around this mechanic. So while you can use it sparingly and for the most part keep your wheels on the ground to win a lot of the races, smartly placed boost gates and fire rings are dotted in areas that welcome and reward the daring. Some tracks can even have you in the air more than on the actual ground, and while that may sound antithetical to the nature of racers, when mastered, it was actually really quite fun. I know a lot of people call this a Pure clone, and I can't really attest to that as I'm yet to play Pure. I've had it in the backlog for years and need to get round to it at some point, but having no prior knowledge of that game, I can honestly say that this is a blast to play. A little brown and blurry at times, it's not really a looker like Split Second or Blur, but the moment-to-moment gameplay provides a lot of fun. There's an extensive tournament to get stuck into, but the gameplay is so solid that even replaying tracks to find a quicker route to shave off some time still felt rewarding. I do have some issues with the game though. When boosting, which you do a lot of in this game, the camera turns almost black and white and blurs around the edges of your screen to signify the acceleration gained, but what it means is that it's even harder to keep track of your surroundings and where you're supposed to be going. In a game where fidelity isn't its strongest suit, this did pose a bit of a problem and was an odd design choice in my opinion. Also, both motocross and ATVs are no strangers to airborne stunts in the real world, so why you can't perform any here is a bit of a missed opportunity, as is the lack of any road rash style punches and kicks to throw at your opponents. But to be honest, I got over those grievances pretty quickly and ended up having a really good time with this game. You can still find it for under £5 here in the UK, and for that price, it is well worth picking up and adding to the collection.
It's here. This is it.
Drop it! What the hell?
The Bureau XCOM Declassified is a third-person tactical cover-based shooter and acts as a narrative prequel to XCOM Enemy Unknown. Set during the height of the Cold War, the main premise of the game is that you'll be playing as William Carter, a field agent and member of the Bureau, the predecessor to the Extraterrestrial Combat Unit, or XCOM, as they tackle an imminent alien invasion on the shores of America. Inspired by films and TV shows like The Right Stuff and The Day the Earth Stood Still and even The X-Files, it has a great 1960s sci-fi B-movie feel to it. They really nail that era's look and mood, from the sharp suits and trilbies to the Cold War era paranoia and top secret military programs. The Bureau's headquarters serve as the game's hub space where you can interact with other people of interest. Using a dialogue tree, you can select different conversational options when chatting to NPCs, and it's here where you'll also recruit agents and choose one of 4 different classes for them: Commando, Engineer, Recon and Support, with each class having different abilities and weapons. For instance, the Commando class specialises in direct offensive abilities and rifles, while the Engineer class relies on landmines and automatic turrets. You'll also get the opportunity to choose the recruit's background from 6 possible options, and each provides a minor perk that enhances the recruit's combat efficiency. You'll take cover and issue orders while repelling an invading force of otherworldly aliens, or as this game calls them, the Outsiders. You'll be accompanied by 2 companions when out on missions that are AI controlled. However, as mentioned, their actions can be manipulated by issuing commands. You can make them move to more defensive or offensive positions, get them to target a specific enemy, take cover, or use a skill such as laying down a turret, for example. This is all done by entering the radial wheel of battle focus mode. Here, time pretty much grinds to a halt while you internally strategize the best course of action. You will also be able to see the area of effect for a particular skill or attack, the percentage of success for that attack, and even the health of your squad. Outside of battle focus mode, the game plays like a decent cover-based third-person shooter. You'll get access to a bunch of terrestrial and alien-made firearms. Ammunition is limited though, so you will need to keep an eye out for ammo stashes as you explore each mission area, as well as collectibles like documents and audio recordings that will further develop the game's world and lore. And as is expected with this series, there is a permadeath mechanic in place, so should any of your recruits get killed in the line of duty, they're gone for good. However, keep them alive throughout missions and they will gain experience points, which will level them up and unlock even more abilities. The missions themselves are very linear, which I suppose is to be expected with this kind of game, but it did start to feel a little rinse and repeat after a while. And while the story is good, it never truly takes off in a way I would have hoped, as it's more focused on the combat between the good humans and the bad aliens. There's not a ton of nuance here, but it is focused on its objective, I suppose, so will just come down to individual preference in that regard. Its mix of real-time combat and pause screen strategizing feels unique, as does its Cold War era setting, and while the action-heavy cover-based combat feels robust and decent enough, the most fun occurs when coordinating your team to outsmart and outmaneuver your enemies, utilizing their skills and chaining attacks together. Don't get me wrong, it's not really a patch on the more traditional XCOM games, but I don't think it needs to be erased from history like some die-hard fans were calling for when this originally released. If you can find a copy of the Bureau for dirt cheap in the second-hand market as I did, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised and is well worth a look.
Carter, this is Falk. We are en route. Take the diesel to the test site and signal us when you arrive.
Oh no.
I didn't like that.
Hold on to something!
Look at that thing!
You two, hang on! God damn it!
That bird ain't playing around. Get your ass to the CEC News building. I'm finding you a way out.
Mirror's Edge is a first-person platform game and parkour simulator in a way. There are moments of combat, but that definitely isn't the main focus here or the game's draw. It's very much a product of its time, releasing in the mid to late 2000s when parkour was flavour of the month. It takes great inspiration from the Hollywood movies of its day that were also jumping and wall riding on that bandwagon. It plays out a lot like the on-foot chase sequences of films like Casino Royale and the Bourne series. The game is set in a near-future city where crime has been pretty much eradicated and life for the most part is conflict-free and comfortable. However, this is achieved and maintained by a very oppressive, borderline totalitarian regime that controls everything from the police to the media. As such, a resistance has organically grown and developed in the underground networks of society. Essentially, a group of parkour couriers known as runners operate independently to deliver private goods and sensitive information to people while bypassing the watchful eye of Big Brother. You'll be playing as Faith Connors, a 24-year-old runner on a mission as you jump, glide and slide your way past government enforcement and surveillance. Soon you'll encounter Kate, Faith's twin sister, who happens to be working on the other side of this societal divide as a straight-laced and disciplined police officer. The crux of the game's main story is set here as Kate is framed for something she didn't do. Faith offers her a chance to leave with her and find refuge in the city's underground, but Kate declines as fleeing would only incriminate her further in the eyes of the law, and she is still dedicated to her role as protector of the city. And so, with the help of fellow runner and senpai Merc, Faith blitzes through the city's skyline, following leads that might point her to the people framing her sister. So that's the plot setup anyway. It's perfectly serviceable and does enough to keep things ticking along, but the gameplay is where this one really shines. While the story may be seen as formulaic by some, the gameplay and design of the world is anything but, especially at the time of release. In a city devoid of anything natural looking and a strong and consistent use of clinical white and primary reds and blues, the aesthetics of this game really stand out amongst the strong percentage of all other games released during this gen. Looming white megastructures that are only broken up by the occasional red, blue or yellow interactable objects provide the perfect playground for Faith to navigate through. You'll be jumping from rooftop to rooftop, climbing pipes and scaffolding, wall running and sliding down zip lines as you try to reach your goal, with the aim of doing all of this as seamlessly as possible so that your flow and inevitably your speed isn't hampered. I did find it really cool how much of a role momentum plays in this. Preserving it as you run through levels and over obstacles means that you'll be able to run even faster, jump farther and climb higher. It's an added injection of sim-like realism that for once doesn't actually harm the fun factor. There is combat in the game. You can punch, kick and disarm enemies that get in your way. You can also pick up the drop weapons of your defeated foes or guns you might just find lying around, but to utilise any of them means to stop running, which goes against the very essence of this game. But more than anything, the combat is just way less fun here. The enjoyment instead is found by sprinting and sliding past your opponents with bullets zipping by as you do so. It's actually quite exhilarating. Sometimes you can achieve all this in your first run, but as the levels progress they do get more confusing as to where the game actually wants you to go. So it does become a bit of a trial and error experience. But once the route is discovered, replaying a level till you get a seamless and clean run provides its own enjoyment should you want to engage with it in that way. In addition to the main campaign, there's a time trial mode where you'll have to complete courses as fast as possible. A speedrun mode essentially, which makes total sense for a game like this. I can't really comment on that though, as I've only messed around with the story mode, but it's good to know that should you fall head over heels for this style of gameplay, there's more to dive into once you finish the campaign. Either way, Mirror's Edge is well worth picking up and adding to the collection if you haven't already.
Faith.
Yeah, I'll be okay.
Better talk fast. I can see your hands starting to sweat. You set up Kate Connors, didn't you?
They say hope begins in the dark, but most just flail around in the blackness, searching for their destiny. The darkness, for me, is where I shine.
Perfect.
The Chronicles of Riddick: Assault on Dark Athena is a first-person sci-fi action game based on the Vin Diesel movie franchise and a direct sequel to the Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. Originally an OG Xbox exclusive, Escape from Butcher Bay was remade and included on the disc for Assault on Dark Athena. So you're essentially getting two games for the price of one here. I mean, you do have to give props to Starbreeze Entertainment for that one, as that kind of gesture of goodwill is just unheard of these days. But for the purposes of this video, I'll only be discussing Assault on Dark Athena. The game starts as Riddick is disturbed out of cryosleep and unwillingly relocated to a gigantic mercenary vessel known as the Dark Athena. Run by the game's main antagonists, Revis and Spinner, Riddick manages to narrowly escape their clutches, but his fellow shipmates aren't so lucky. Using a combination of stealth mechanics, first-person shooting and platforming, you'll sneak your way through the gigantic spaceship, eliminating any guards and mercs along the way. Some are human, while others are these remote-controlled cyborgs known as drones. Eventually you'll come across a hangar within the ship that's housing prisoners. These NPCs can be interacted with and will provide missions for you moving forward. You might need a vent tool, for example, to proceed further into the ship, and an engineer held captive in one of the cells will manufacture one for you, providing you do something for her first and gather the necessary materials needed. So it's kind of like a Metroidvania in a way, as you'll be retracing your steps through the ship on multiple occasions as you unlock more abilities and newer ways of navigating. You'll crouch in shadowy corners waiting for the perfect time to make your move. You can eliminate enemies stealthily with your signature dual-wielded curved blades and then drag their bodies into the shadows to conceal them from their friends, or you can just go in all guns blazing using the many different firearms you find in the game. There's shotguns, assault rifles and SMGs for example, but the most fun was this gun that fires sticky balls of compressed air that attach themselves to their targets and can be triggered at a later time. You can fire up to 5 off at any given time before you detonate them, meaning you can plant one on 5 different enemies and then trigger them all to explode at once, or if you're up against a bigger enemy, you can pile all 5 onto them directly to create a much larger and more damaging explosion. This weapon wasn't just useful for combat scenarios either, it was pretty much compulsory to solve some of the environmental puzzles found in the game. Aside from the firearms though, a few chapters will even see Riddick either control a drone remotely himself or don a variety of mech suits that each have their own distinctive playstyles and feel to them. These moments were great, I thought, as they broke up the traditional gameplay loop of the game nicely and were all really cool to control and play as. And there's other mechanics too, like how Riddick can activate his own unique night vision for when he's crawling through pitch black air vents or loading docks. But I've got to say, I was thoroughly impressed with this and loved every minute of my playthrough. Well, maybe with the exception of the final boss. That felt a little cheap and confusing as to what I actually needed to do to win. I got there in the end, but even that felt like a fluke. I don't mind the challenge, that's not what I'm talking about, it's more that ideally I'd like clearly defined win conditions. I mean, even after beating it, I still couldn't tell you what it is you'd need to do to win. But that aside, this game was great fun. It felt true to its source material. Vin Diesel was great as Riddick. I mean, he doesn't say much, which is probably for the best, but it's still quite an iconic character that is portrayed really well here. Also, it doesn't shy away from its more adult themes and language. The writing was good and on occasion quite shocking. There's a lot of oppressed people on this ship on the edge of utter despair, and the casual F-bomb and even C-bomb drops reflected that. I dived into this for the first time recently and I still can't believe how long I waited to actually play this brilliant game. I think it took me around 8 or 9 hours to finish overall, so not long. I rinsed through it in a couple of evenings as I just couldn't get enough of it, and then immediately started playing Escape from Butcher's Bay again. The fact that you get both games on one disc is such a win, so if you haven't played either of these before, then do yourself a favour and grab a copy next time you see it. It's well worth having in the collection.
Oh, I'd love to stay and chat, but, well, you know... Kill him!
Well, there you have it guys, 5 more underrated bangers for the PS3. Let me know down in the comments what you think of today's selection, whether you plan on grabbing any of them or what your thoughts are if you've already played them. As usual, if you've enjoyed today's video, then have a think about hitting the like button, as it genuinely helps out the channel quite a bit, and hit the subscribe button if you're new here and like all things PlayStation. Next up will be another video from my PS4 Hidden Gems series, so keep an eye out for that if that sounds like something you might be interested in. That's going to do it for today, gang, so until next time, take care, be good, and game on.